I can just trim the front out.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to admit in. Here we go. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are in a Zoom meeting, so if you would keep your mics muted, we'd really appreciate that. Although we'd love to have you join us at any time when you're ready, and we'll go over some of the key Zoom features to get started. So welcome. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. The slides that I'm sharing right now are also in the chat, so I will make sure to continue putting in the proper links so you have access to the content that we're sharing. And we're going to get started. So welcome everyone to the Summer of Access webinar series. We are so excited to have you today and our presenter, Crystal Scott. This is brought to you by L'Etoile Education and the Accessibility L&D community. This is the first of our series. We will be running 10 more throughout the summer. So I'm going to go ahead and move us right into our Zoom meeting reminders. So because we're in a Zoom meeting setting, we want to make sure that we stay muted unless speaking. We use chat or raise hand feature for questions. The recording will be shared in the Accessibility L&D Slack community, and we will have live captions and transcripts are available throughout the session today. We'd love for you to take an opportunity to say hello in the chat and let us know where you are calling in from today. Webinar topics remaining. If you haven't had a chance to check these out, you can do that on slide 3 of the link that I just put in the chat. We have some great sessions coming up. The remaining topics in the series, we have slides for all, 3 accessibility wins, beyond accessibility, reaping all the benefits. So we hope you can join us for those. And let's just jump right in and tell you about our presenter today. Crystal Scott is the founder of Graceful Web Studio, a Webflow expert and certified professional in web accessibility with over a decade of experience in front-end development and inclusive design. She specializes in building and remediating accessible websites, creating long-term strategies for SEO, usability, and WCAG conformance. As the founder of the Accessibility Book Club, she's passionate about making accessibility practical, approachable, and essential for every team. Crystal is also my web designer, colleague, and friend. So welcome, Crystal. We're so happy to have you. I'm going to turn the share over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and take a deep breath. Always being the first in the series can be a little nervous, but we are talking today about one of my favorite subjects, and I believe this is so important to ensuring that your website or learning materials are accessible to all. So we're going to focus today on access, keyboard navigation in digital content. So hello everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. The topics I'll be covering today coming straight from the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, we're going to talk about 2.1.1 keyboard and how interactive elements must function equally for mouse, touch, and keyboard users. Number 2, we're going to talk briefly about 2.1.2 no keyboard traps and how focus must not be trapped, creating critical blockers. Then we're going to touch on 2.4.7, focus visible, and how focused elements must be visually obvious. And bouncing off of that one, we're going to touch on 1.4.11, non-text contrast, and how visible focus indicators must meet a minimum of 3:1 contrast ratios. Then we're going to touch on 2.4.3, focus order, and how focus should follow a logical and expected sequence. So inaccessible navigation remains a major barrier for many users. Let's explore how to design with keyboard access in mind and why it matters. So why does it matter that folks can come to your web applications or websites and access your site with a keyboard? Lack of keyboard access affects everyone. Developers and power users rely on keyboard shortcuts to work efficiently. For me, myself, when I'm testing a website, if I'm developing a website, I spend a lot of time with 2 hands on my keyboard and almost get frustrated if I have to take them off and go to my mouse, right? I want to be able to use my shortcuts and work efficiently through the pages that I'm working on or the pages that I'm testing. We also need to touch on physical disabilities and understanding the challenges that this brings. So many users rely on keyboard only, not a mouse. But many developers and designers are developing and designing for mouse users only, creating barriers and WCAG failures. So some of the physical disabilities that need keyboard access are folks with motor limitations, weakness, tremors, lack of coordination, paralysis, and how this affects their computer interactions. Also, folks with joint disorders, arthritis, and pain can impede movement and computer use. Missing limbs requires alternative navigation methods for digital content access, and blind screen reader users rely on keyboard navigation instead of a mouse. So W3C has got some great videos that really reiterate the fact that there are diverse abilities and barriers for physical disabilities and why keyboard access matters. The most important part is accessibility and how it's all about people. So I want us to go ahead and watch this video together because they can explain some of these aspects better than me.
That's very low, Crystal. I don't think we're going to hear it.
Oh, am I not sharing with sound?
Yeah, that might be it.
Okay,
It's
let
just,
me
I heard a
stop real
very faint
quick.
sound there, so
No
that's
problem. Let's
okay.
try this one more time and I'm going to share with sound, hopefully. There we go, and that's going to really help. Am I on the right screen, Nicole?
You are on the right screen.
Okay, let's try this one more time.
Physical disabilities affect how people move, including an inability to move, limited mobility, a lack of coordination, tremors and involuntary movement, pain that impedes movement, as well as missing and non-typical limbs. People who use a mouse might have difficulty with fine motor control. For example, tremors, non-typical joints, pain, or fatigue can prevent people from being able to select small targets such as small links, buttons, and controls. Websites and apps with large clickable areas around checkboxes, radio buttons, and other controls are easier to use for people with limited mobility and reduced dexterity. Other people use speech input instead. While speech input uses the keyboard interface in the background, websites and apps that are programmed and designed with consideration for speech input are more effective. For example, when the name of a button in the code matches the name displayed visually, people using speech input know what they need to say to click that button.
Click Send Email.
Some people do not use a mouse, touchscreen, or other pointing devices. They might use specialized keyboards with larger keys or more space between the keys. Some use tools such as a mouth stick or head stick to type. Websites and apps that make functions visibly clear with active focus styles and usable with keyboard only are easier to use for people with physical disabilities. Regardless of the input device used, websites and apps that provide sufficient time to type and to complete tasks are easier to use for people with physical disabilities because it might take people longer to navigate and type and to correct typing mistakes. Providing clear headings and instructions helps people to understand the tasks and reduces the time needed to complete them. This includes instructions for forms and functionality, as well as error messages and dialogues. Finally, websites and apps that work in both portrait and landscape orientation are easier to use for people who have their devices mounted to their wheelchair, desk, or bed.
You can help make technology accessible to me.
Accessibility. It's about people. For more information,
Great. So for more information, you can visit the w3.org /WAI/people. They've got some great videos that explain different disabilities and barriers. But for this purpose, they touched on a few more topics than I'm going to. And I can't seem to get my mouse wheel to go to the next slide.
I did put your slides into the chat, so if you want to just kind of click on that link and start from there, maybe that'll work.
That's okay. I'm just going to exit and go back in. It would not be a great presentation unless we had some technical difficulties, right?
Good point.
So let's go into keyboard only navigation essentials. WCAG 2.1.1 keyboard, the understanding documents say that all functionality of content must be operable through a keyboard interface without requiring specific timings for individual keystrokes, and mouse input can still be supported, but it cannot be required. So these need to be equal. Mouse and keyboard need to be equal. So how do we navigate with a keyboard only? I challenge each of you, if you've never tried to navigate a website with only a keyboard, please do so today. Go to Amazon or Walmart or somewhere you often visit and put your mouse away somewhere you can't reach it and try to purchase something with only your keyboard. This will give you a real sense of what it's like for keyboard only users. Use your tab key to move forward. Use your shift tab key to move backwards. Enter in space will activate elements such as links and buttons, but your space bar will be the only thing that activates the checkboxes and the radio buttons. If you've ever been on a form and you hit the enter key while on a checkbox or radio button, that form may have tried to submit on you, and that is why, because you need that space key for those. Arrow keys will move you through menu links, sliders, carousels, and if programmers have gotten really fancy, sometimes with pagination, arrow keys will move you from page to page. The escape key will close modals, hopefully, and or drop down menus, hopefully, and return focus to where they were triggered from. For a basic demo, I'm going to take you guys to my website actually, and I'm going to use my keyboard to navigate through. So I'm using my tab key to go forwards, and I'm using shift tab to move backwards. If I want to activate my skip link, I hit the enter key. It scrolls me down, and now I'm down into the hero where it skipped over my navigation. If I come back to my contact button, it's going to open a dialog for me, sending focus to the dialog, and you're going to see here that this is a modal dialog that has trapped my focus. Using my keyboard only, I'm going to go to the close button, activate, and see that my focus has been returned. So that is basic keyboard navigation. For a great resource to check out for patterns, the W3C has provided the APG patterns. If you go into these, you can actually see examples of different keyboard interaction. This can get a little technical in here, but if something is not functioning the way it should and you want to see how it should function according to the W3C, the APG patterns are a wonderful resource to use. Okay, let's talk about focusable elements and
Crystal,
semantic
can you
features.
drop that link? Sorry, I didn't have that, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat. There you go. So let's talk about focusable elements for a minute. So native HTML elements that are focusable are going to be buttons, anchor links with hrefs, input elements, select elements, text area elements are all focusable by default, with a few others that are not on my list. But these ones don't need any special attributes. They don't need any JavaScript. These are going to be focusable in the DOM out of the box. These elements are designed for keyboard interaction and support built-in accessibility features. Users can navigate to them using the tab key and activate them with enter or space. Semantic HTML helps assistive technologies understand and announce elements correctly. We want to avoid using non-semantic elements like divs and spans for interactive behavior unless enhanced with proper attributes. Now, this is a really sticky area. So just because you can use a div and turn it into a button doesn't mean you should. But there will be instances where you're working within a do-it-yourself platform and they have given you only the option where they've taken a div and they've transformed it into a button, and you don't have an option to change that to the semantic HTML element. Now, those can be enhanced with proper attributes like a tab index value, the proper role button, and some JavaScript with event listeners. But that is a lot to say. That is a lot of extra work. If you just use a button to begin with, you won't have those extra additional steps. So let's take a look at a semantic button versus a non-semantic button. And as I was going over these images today, we could have done a little better with this example, so I do apologize, and I'll explain why. So on the first image, you're going to see the HTML is a button element. It has an ID of button. It says click me, which I don't recommend using that language. It's non-descriptive, ambiguous. Let's not use click me. It can also be considered ableist, right? Because we want keyboard users to feel included too. For CSS, we have it listed to use some styling to make it look like a button. And JavaScript is actually not needed here. So if you want to give this button extra functionality, like a dialogue functionality and you're going to be sending focus somewhere. Or if it's a disclosure with RE expanded and it's going to be having an action, you're going to need to add additional JavaScript. But if it's just a button, it's going to act like a button without additional JavaScript. Over on the right-hand side, we have an example where the HTML is a div with the ID of button, again, the ambiguous language. Then we have CSS styling, again, to make it look like a button. And then the JavaScript that is going to be required. And this is going to require quite a bit of JavaScript to make sure that a tab index is added, the correct role is added, and all the functionality of this button is added. Because if you don't use JavaScript correctly, nobody's going to be able to get to your button or use your button. So always try to use semantic buttons, semantic elements in general to get the full functionality you're looking for.
Crystal, we have a
Okay,
question for you. Do you have a recommended code editor for practicing their semantic HTML code editing? And if you do, would you share that?
code editor. So I bounce back and forth through VS Code or Sublime Text. I think they both have some really great purposes. VS Code connects seamlessly to GitHub. So if you're working in GitHub, I'd go VS Code. If you just want something quick and dirty, I would go with Sublime Text. Okay, so let's talk about keyboard failures. I've got a great example for you guys, and this example is going to demonstrate a common accordion component that looks like it has buttons, but they are not semantic buttons and have been programmed to function with mouse-only clicks. So I use Webflow Reloom all the time. I love their libraries, but I have found that a lot of these components that you can just drag and pull in are going to seem like they're the correct components, but they're not going to function the way we want them to. So if you see here with my tab key, I'm over here on the back button. I've tabbed to the back button, and I'm going to try to tab to my accordion. Oops. My focus has now gone to that contact button you can see here. It's gotten straight past my accordion. So if I am a keyboard only user, there's no way I'm going to be able to access that content because I can't get to it and I can't function, it won't function with my keyboard. So we're going to take a quick peek under the hood. We're going to open up the inspect and we're going to go into our developer tools panel and we're going to take a quick look at this element. We're going to see here that they have in fact used a div. It has no tab index value. It doesn't have the correct role. This is not a focusable element. Therefore, you've got a WCAG failure of 2.1.1 and a completely unusable component for a large number of your audience members. So do be careful, test with your tab keys, and understand what's gone wrong here. Okay. So that was just a
We have a
small
couple of
example.
questions. Well, is there a way to make the screen? Oh, can we make your screen bigger? Can we zoom in a bit, I think? Yeah,
Sure.
thank you.
Is that a little better, I hope? Go to 250%.
That looks good to me. I don't know.
Okay. So I get asked a lot about links and buttons, and I will, Kim, for specifically for the examples, I'll make that bigger next time. I apologize. So link versus button. Buttons trigger an action or an element such as submitting a form, opening a dialog, canceling an action, or performing a delete operation. Links navigate to a new page or a different section on the same page. So remember, buttons perform actions and links navigate. Those are the two biggest differences. So does it fail WCAG 4.1.2 for having the wrong role or function? Now, I think it should, personally, but according to the specifications, the short answer is no. This is not a hard failure because a link can function as a button and a button can function as a link, but they should not. For best practice usability, links must be in an anchor tag with a valid href and buttons must be in a button element. But if they function, if you have a link that functions as a button and you have a button that functions as a link, technically this is not a failure. Different purposes may also look the same. Here's another question I get all the time. Does it fail WCAG if they're styled the same? And the answer again is no. But for best practice usability, you could style them to look differently. Style your links one way and your buttons one way, so it's understand to your visual users the differences. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to keyboard traps. So 2.1.2, no keyboard traps. The understanding document says that if keyboard focus can be moved to a component, it must also be possible to move focus away from that component using only the keyboard. If this requires non-standard keys, users must be informed how. So why does this matter? Traps prevent users from progressing or leaving a component, creating a critical access barrier. Nothing is more frustrating than being a keyboard-only user and getting stuck in a component you can't get out of. Who it affects? All keyboard users. How to test for this? Using only your keyboard, try to navigate into and out of, say, mobiles, drop-downs, widgets. If you get stuck in an endless loop, you've got yourself a failure. Now, fortunately, these are pretty rare. It is rare. I think in my entire career as an accessibility auditor and specialist remediator, I've found like 2 real keyboard traps where I was like, oh my gosh, I found one. So it's really cool to not find them, but we do need to test for them. And the only way to test for those is with your keyboard. So when do we want to trap focus, right? And when I say trap, I mean temporarily trap. Modal dialogues, if you're calling them a modal, it means that they must trap focus within while they are opened, but there must be a keyboard method to untrap your focus, such as a close button or the escape key. So you don't actually want to trap them. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to Focus Visible Navigation Essentials. So WCAG 2.4.7 Focus Visible says that we ensure that all user interface components are operable via keyboard have a clearly visible focus indicator. This allows users to visually identify which element is currently focused and where their interaction will take place. Who this affects? All users who need to see where their focus is. Low vision, cognitive, keyboard users, anyone using a keyboard to navigate. It is so frustrating to go on a website and trying to navigate with your keyboard, even when you're doing your testing and you can't see where your focus is. So how do we test for this? We navigate by keyboard. Can you see the focus? If not, there's a problem. Also, does the focus state pass 4.1.11, which says that non-text contrast must have a 3:1 minimum contrast ratio? So I found this interesting resource. We're going to do a demo using our color contrast analyzer tool. And this CSS Tricks is having a little fun with custom focus styles. They had a little too much fun for some of these, and we've definitely got some failures in here. So there's a couple different ways that you can do focus, right? So the most common would be the outline. This is the one that I like to use because I feel like it gives me the most flexibility and the most control. So I'm going to open my handy dandy color contrast analyzer tool. Do I need to make this larger for folks? I'm going to go ahead and try to zoom in on both my page, and I think I can make my tool bigger too. Okay. So what we're looking at here is we're going to do a couple different measurements here. For the focus visible outline, we're going to take the eyedropper tool and we're going to grab the blue. You can use your keyboard here to make sure that your little dot aligns where you want it to. And it's going to disappear on me because I'm sharing my screen. Oh, this is great. Okay.
Whoops.
Whoops. Okay, color contrast analyzer is going to be finicky. So here's what we're going to do. Oh, you guys are seeing all my chat GPT secrets in the background. Sorry, folks, give me just a second. I'm going to align my windows side by side and see if I can get it to function better. Okay, so we're going to take a measurement of the foreground color, the outline color, and we're going to take a measurement of the background color. What I love about the color contrast analyzer tool is that you can open these up and it will give you kind of cheats as to what this applies to. This is really great for contrast for text, which we're not testing right now, but I just wanted to point out how awesome this tool is. It'll tell you exactly like what regular size text is, what large size text is. It'll remind you of the minimum sizes or if it's bolded, and it'll give you failures for both here. We're currently looking at 1.4.11 for the non-text contrast, and we're going to see we only have a contrast ratio of this light blue with the white background at a 1.9 to 1. So this is a failure. Also, not only is it failing the background, but you can see here that the outline is butted up against the element. So we're going to do another test with it with the element, and we're going to see that the focus indicator and the element also fail at 1.5 to 1. So this would actually fail twice, right? So we could list this all the same together depending upon your reporting style, but we want to make sure that our focus indicators are passing 3 to 1 minimum with the background and with the element in question. So we've got a couple other examples here. We can see here that they have done a color change, right? So they've added a background color on focus. Now this background color is this awesome teal color, which might go away as I grab my eyedropper. Let's see if I can get it to stay this way. Nope. Okay. So the teal color is going away, so I can't grab it with my eyedropper. I would open my developer tools and make it stay, but I don't want to lose anybody on this one. So I can tell you right now from looking at this that this is going to fail contrast. It's going to fail it on the link, and it's going to fail it on the button, but it's not going to fail it on the form field. And why is that? Because we have the blinky little eye tool. What's it called, Nicole? Do you know what the little blinky thing is called? The cursor?
The blinky cursor?
Yes, I know there's an official name for that one.
Oh, no. I remember it. Anyone know? Put it in the chat. That's all
Okay.
I should know.
But the blinky cursor is indicating focus, and so we're using a different way to indicate that's not color alone. Therefore, we don't have to measure the color contrast. If it were only the color here, that would be a failure. So if you're using a non-contrast indicator such as a thicker border, thicker text, then oh, is it called a caret? Oh, okay, thank you. The blinky caret. So hopefully that'll give you guys a good sense of how to measure. I do highly recommend downloading the TPGI Color Contrast Analyzer tool that is free for all. Nicole, do you want me to drop that link?
I can do that. And I was also going to let everyone know I did drop that if you are coming from us from an instructional design or an e-developing perspective, that I dropped the Storyline 362 color focus indicator article in there as well, which is kind of talking about the same thing. So I'll just try to drop those resources for folks as you go.
Great. Thank you,
Excellent.
Nicole.
You're welcome.
And hover states are exempt from color contrast requirements because the mouse cursor counts as the indicator. So you could have your hover states and your focus states match. You don't have to. And your focus states do not have to pass the same contrast requirements as your focus states. Okay, so a couple ones that we just touched on. You can use different focus indicators like a solid outline, text enhancements, box shadows, thicker border, background color. But if you're using that change of color, make sure it has the 3 to 1 contrast ratio. So I'm actually going to skip this demo. I think we just demoed pretty well. Well, should we do one of I'll do a failure for you guys. I know I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I'm already at 9:28, so I could talk about this all day, but we're going to keep going here. We're going to do a demo of a failure where there is no focus indicator. So to test this page, I'm going to use my tab key and start tabbing through. Oh, where's my focus? I'm going to do shift tab to go back to that because I can see my focus here, but I'm going to tab forward. Oh, no focus indicator. Oh, there it is. It's back, right? So what's going on with that drop down? Because I'm assuming that's the middle item that should have focus right now, but I can't see where my focus is. So again, I'm going to open up my inspector and take a quick peek at this guy. Hope I don't lose anybody here.
So what we talked about, Crystal and I, is that this is important. You might look at this and be a little uncomfortable, but it is important to kind of have an idea of what she's doing and what she's looking for.
Right.
So,
So you
yeah.
could fail this right now. You don't have to open up your inspector. There's no visible focus indicator. This fails, right? But if you want to go deeper and understand why it's failing, you can open up your inspector. You can go to your styles panel and you can put this into focus visible, or excuse me, focus state. And you'll see it right here pop up. Outline 0. This is bad for focus. So some designers or developers are going to think that this is awesome because there's no outlines to when somebody clicks, right? Because they're designing for mouse users, but we're designing for everybody. So outline 0 is bad news bears. Beware of the CSS outline 0. Here is a global focus style that I use in most of my projects. I'm going to drop this into the chat. This will actually give you 2 colors. This will give you a black outline and a white style inside the black outline. So it should work globally on your white backgrounds and your dark backgrounds, but please test it in your own environment and different environments to ensure that it is covering in different browsers and on different elements. Okay. For our last subject, we're going to talk about focus order navigation essentials. 2.4.3 focus order requires that when a web page is navigated sequentially, the order of focusable elements must preserve meaning and operability. This ensures that users relying on keyboard navigation or assistive technologies experience content in a logical and predictable sequence. Why this matters? Users that rely on predictable logical flow. Who this affects? Screen reader users and keyboard users. And how it works. So focus order is naturally going to go in the DOM order, top to bottom. If your DOM order is set up a certain way, and when I say DOM order, I mean the document object model. So if we look over here, this is the DOM order, right? So this is your document object model, and the header navigation menu has been placed at the top. Therefore, the first elements in the DOM are going to be the first elements that receive focus. Now, I could have put this header way down here in my DOM and used some fancy styling to position it at the top, right? But that would kind of kill my focus order. So top to bottom from the DOM is where your focus is naturally going to go. And to show you that, I'm going to open up the ARC Toolkit. As we're talking about how to test, we're going to look at the ARC Toolkit to visualize the tab order. Now, hopefully this website has good tab order because this is not my website. This was showing a previous failure. Okay, and they do have good tab order. So they're missing a skip link because I would have expected if this were an accessible website, the first item in navigation would have been the skip link, but that's okay. So we're going to see here that the natural tab order, without them doing anything extra, they've just aligned everything from top to bottom with their HTML. We've got a sequential logical order. Now, what would a failure look like if we're just looking at this navigation menu? Let's say that my tab goes from the logo, jumps over to contact, and then it jumps back over to this dropdown, and then it jumps back over to the about page, right? This can be done crazily, adding positive tab index values, which we're going to get into in just a minute, but that would be a specific failure. If you're in a single component and your tab order is not logical, it's jumping around from different places back and forth, now that would be a failure of focus order.
So that visual, and if anyone has any questions, I thought that visual was extremely helpful and how you use the ARC toolkit here. And if I'm working on my own e-learning or instructional design or projects, or I'm working on my own website in the background, because I have, the ability to do that, I love that you use the ARC toolkit to just kind of look at the flow. And so if many of us are trying to understand the why and the patterns, but, then we get into can I fix it? Can I not fix it? So I just wanted to kind of point out the strength of this visual, Crystal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and what went wrong? You don't always have to understand what went wrong, but we're going to get into a little bit. So, the ARC Toolkit is free also for everyone to download. It's a browser extension. Do you want me to drop that one, Nicole, or do you have that one?
No, I'll have it ready.
Great. I highly recommend our toolkit. It's got some amazing tools I don't have time to go over today. But understanding focus order and tab index. So tab index 0 is naturally placed on all focusable elements. We don't have to put it there. This is an attribute that lives in the background by default for focusable elements when you're using semantic focusable elements like buttons, anchor links, inputs. These have a natural tab index 0 value, even though you can't see that in the code. So tab index 0 makes elements focusable in regular keyboard flow. You can use it for custom controls. This will help make non-semantic buttons into buttons, for example. I've added to this div a roll button, giving it the correct role, and tab index 0 will put it in focus order. So I will be able to get to this element as I'm tabbing through my page. Tab index -1 removes from tab sequence the natural tab sequence, but allows focus through scripting. So you'll see this on dialogues. If you open up a dialogue and you'll see that the dialogue container has gotten focus, a tab index -1 value has probably been used to give it temporary focusability. But once your focus leaves that element, you're not going to be able to get back to it with your tab key. And that's okay because it's a non-interactive element. So we want to be careful that we're not leaving non-interactive elements, non-actionable elements in tab order. That would also be a failure of focus order. So if you have decided that you're going to add a tab index 0 to a dialogue, that would actually be a failure because the dialogue itself is non-actionable, non-interactive. So you don't want that in the regular tab flow, right? So sometimes when new developers come to start coding and they care about accessibility and they want to do things the right way, sometimes they start adding tab index to elements, maybe thinking that, oh, I want keyboard users to be able to get to these elements. I want screen reader users to be able to get to these elements. And so they're adding the tab index 0 value to images or things that are non-interactive, and that would be an example of the failures. So tab index positive numbers, we want to avoid these at all costs. Please don't use them. And if you see them, they're probably going to be failing focus order. They disrupt the natural reading flow. They take over everything. So if I were to add a tab index positive value to this element down here that should be 12th in tab order, if I give this a tab index 1, it's going to be first. And then the user is going to miss out on all 11 items that they should have hit first in their logical flow. So please don't use positive tab index values.
And I think it's important to note, we might not be creating those. Like I might not be writing them in, but if you notice something's out of order, you could go look at what Crystal just described to see if there's a +1 to be able to share with the developer or someone on the back end. Hey, this is what I noticed. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, and actually the plus was just for demo purposes. It'll just be the 1. Sorry. Like the 1 or the 2. Okay, so before we wrap up, I do want to touch on voice to text, label and name. From accessibility to mainstream with voice control access. It is becoming more common for everyone to be using voice control, right? From voice assistants and voice messaging like Siri, Google Assistant, and Alexa have made voice interaction super common these days. WhatsApp and other platforms support voice communication. Label and name is so important for Siri, Google Assistant, and Alexa to be able to interact with elements based upon their visual label. So if something is labeled visually as a submit button, but in the background we've added a crazy label like an ARIA label that says send message. Now when the user says activate submit, voice control is not going to work because technically the accessible name of that component is send message. So you want to make sure that you're using labels that describe where your link is going, what your button is doing, and also giving the user that same accessible name so they can activate those controls with their voice control. Dragon Naturally Speaking also enables hands-free navigation, and voice technology market is estimated to reach 83 billion in 2032. So this is an important hot topic that we need to stay on top of. In closing, I just want to reiterate that keyboard access is a must. It's not a bonus. It's non-negotiable. Logical focus, visible states, and no traps. Testing essentials, using tools to catch issues even if you're not coding. Everybody can put away their mouse and use their keyboard to go through their application, their web page. It is essential to be able to understand keyboard shortcuts and how to navigate yourself with the keyboard. WCAG versus usability. You can advocate for accessible learning and web pages, no dev skills required. Understanding the differences there between your failures and your usability best practices is super important. If you have questions, you can ask those questions about the differences within the Ally Slack community, within the L&D Slack community, on LinkedIn. I know in the Accessibility Book Club, we love to get questions. Keyboard access is not just innovation, it's inclusion. So let's build with people in mind. And in true closing, please follow me on LinkedIn for more Ally tips. I love connecting with folks that are interested in learning more about accessibility. And if you're really interested in learning more and your professional development, I highly recommend joining the Accessibility Book Club on LinkedIn, where we read one book a month and we share all about accessibility. Thank you so much for having me today, Nicole.
Oh, it's pleasure. I'm always learning when you are presenting, and I always have to go back to the recordings and follow along and get into the more technical pieces. So we really appreciate that. What a wonderful presentation, and we really just love that you share your knowledge with us. So it is always just fun to be with you. So thanks everyone for joining us. We just kicked off the series. We hope you join us for more. And we'll get this recording, we'll get the links out, we'll get everything to you. And feel free to reach out to Crystal with questions. And she's always sharing so many great tips on LinkedIn. So you definitely want to be following her for what's coming out. And join us in the Accessibility Book Club and have a wonderful day. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks so much for coming.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.